rise from the ashes. It witnessed something unthinkable. The collapse of a superpower. For decades, the Soviet Union stood as a giant. Powerful, feared, unshakable. Its shadow stretched across continents. Its influence reached deep into global politics. And its military strength shaped the balance of the world. But beneath that image of strength, fractures had already begun. Economic strain, political unrest. Hidden crises spreading silently through 15 republics. And then, in the cold winter of 1991, the giant fell. Not with a single explosion, not through war, but from within. An empire dissolved in front of its own people, leaving millions confused, leaders stunned, and the entire world asking one question. How could a superpower collapse overnight? This is the story of that fall. In the aftermath of World War II, the Soviet Union emerged both victorious and wounded. A nation rebuilt on sacrifice. A superpower forged in steel. But beneath the towering factories and triumphant parades, cracks were already forming. Cracks no one dared to speak about. The Soviet dream promised equality, progress, and a future shaped by collective power. Yet the very system built to transform society was slowly becoming the weight that pulled it down. The Soviet contradiction began in the 1950s to 70s. The USSR had enormous natural resources, strong industrial capacity, a powerful centralized government. But the system suffered from 1. Over-centralization, every decision from Moscow. 2. Low innovation, no reward for efficiency or creativity. 3. Massive military spending, draining civilian economy. 4. Chronic shortages, supply chain inefficiency. Industrial output grew, but slowly. Agriculture lagged behind. While the West embraced computers and automation, the USSR relied on outdated machinery. This ideological rigidity planted the seeds of collapse long before the world saw any crisis. The Cold War was not just a rivalry, it was an economic battlefield. Every missile, every tank, every satellite cost billions. The Soviet Union tried to match the United States step for step, but the Soviet economy was built to endure control, not competition. While Washington invested in technology and consumer markets, Moscow poured its lifeblood into the arms race. The arms race forced the USSR to spend 20 to 25% of its GDP on military power, far higher than the US. Consequences: consumer goods became scarce, food production suffered, technological innovation stalled, living standards dropped sharply in the 70s. Military competition with the US strained the already weak Soviet system. Then came Afghanistan, a war the Soviet Union believed would last months, but stretched into a decade of blood, loss, and humiliation. Thousands of soldiers returned in zinc coffins. Millions of dollars vanished into a desert with no victory in sight. Afghanistan was the Soviet Union's Vietnam, a wound that never healed. The Afghan war drained economic resources, political legitimacy, public trust in government. The conflict divided Soviet society, exposed military weakness, weakened morale, accelerated internal resistance. It was a turning point where citizens widely doubted the system for the first time.
Чтобы подняться вместе и показать миру, что никто не может нас остановить.
In 1985, a new leader arrived with a bold promise: rebuild the Soviet Union from within. His name was Mikhail Gorbachev, and his reforms opened doors that had been shut for 70 years. Glasnost brought truth. Perestroika brought change. But truth revealed decay, and change came too late. Gorbachev's policies, glasnost, openness, perestroika, restructuring, revealed corruption, inefficiency, failed agricultural production, economic mismanagement. Instead of stabilizing, reforms destabilized. Freedom of speech led to mass criticism of the system. Economic restructuring caused inflation and shortages. Across the vast Soviet Empire, old identities began to rise again. From the Baltics to the Caucasus, republics demanded what had been denied for generations: freedom. What began as whispers became movements, and what began as movements became revolutions. By the late 80s, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Georgia, Armenia, Ukraine, and others pushed for independence. Reasons: ethnic identity, economic frustration, cultural suppression, desire for political autonomy. The USSR could no longer contain the demand for national freedom. Then came the disaster that shook the world. Chernobyl, a silent explosion, a radioactive cloud, a truth the government tried to hide, but couldn't. Chernobyl exposed bureaucratic incompetence, secrecy culture, poor emergency response, systemic negligence. Citizens lost trust in the government. It symbolized everything wrong with the Soviet system. As the 1980s ended, shelves emptied, prices soared, factories stopped. The superpower was running out of power. The Soviet people stood in endless lines for food that never arrived. A perfect storm. Oil prices fell, industry collapsed, shortages skyrocketed, inflation rose, black markets expanded, government debt increased. The economy simply couldn't sustain the system anymore. In August 1991, hardline communists tried to turn back time. They launched a coup, hoping to stop the collapse. But the people rose, the army hesitated, and the old guard failed. The coup collapsed within days because citizens protested, military refused violent orders, republics demanded independence, Gorbachev lost authority, Boris Yeltsin gained political power. The coup accelerated the end. On December 25th, 1991, the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin. A nation that once stretched across 11 time zones simply ceased to exist. 70 years of revolution, sacrifice, and power ended in a single winter night. The USSR dissolved officially because republics declared independence, central authority collapsed, economy failed, political legitimacy vanished. The Union Treaty ended. What replaced it was 15 new independent nations. Russia emerging as successor state, a new geopolitical era beginning. On a cold December night in 1991, an empire that once shaped half the world quietly faded into history. No grand speeches, no victory parades, just the silent lowering of a red flag above the Kremlin. For 70 years, the Soviet Union stood as a superpower, forged in revolution, sustained by sacrifice, and ultimately undone by the weight of its own contradictions. Its collapse reshaped borders, toppled governments, and changed the course of every nation it once commanded. But endings are never truly endings. From the chaos that followed, another story was already beginning. A fractured country preparing to rise from its ashes and redefine its place in a newly forged world.